We always have a blast chatting with our guests about all sorts of different topics, but sometimes we go off the rails and dig deeper into their automotive and motorsports pasts. As a bonus, let's go behind the scenes with this pit stop minisode for some extra content that didn't quite fit in the main episode. Sit back, enjoy, and remember to like, subscribe, and support Break Fix on Patreon. We had a great time talking with Dave Peters about how he built HPDEjunkie.com, but we felt like the listeners didn't get to know Dave as a motorsports and car enthusiast. So as an encore to the original episode, we've put together this mini-sode based on our post-session happy hour.
And as we pull in for a quick pit stop, remember to like, subscribe, and support us on Patreon.
And as always, I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm Eric.
So let's roll.
So we talked about HPDE Junkie, but we didn't talk about Dave, the track junkie. It's a totally different thing. So I got some questions for you. So that our listeners and everybody out there can get to know you, the motorsport enthusiast, a little bit better. Do you have a favorite motorsports discipline? And discipline is defined as, road racing, rally, motorcycles, autocross, karting, etc. Is there a favorite out there?
Yeah, absolutely road racing. Or HPDE. I mean, to me, and it's obviously not the same thing, but it's essentially the same track and driving styles.
Absolutely. So with HPDE Junkie, you've mentioned it's you and your partner, John Marsh, but is there more of a HPDE Junkie entourage? Do you guys travel in packs? Is that also part of the whole allure, is to get together, go to tracks together, things like that? Or how does that work?
It actually does. And it's just, been guys that I've met along the way. And it's usually somebody that I'm parked next to, or somebody, I know you guys have experienced this where you've been out in a session and you're just bumper to bumper with another guy and you get off the track and you can't wait to run over there and go, damn, wasn't that a blast? So it's been meeting them like that. So yeah, sometimes I'll have, 6 or 8 other guys that are kind of meeting me there. And it really has become a lot of the enjoyment. It is the friendships and, meeting people in the track and seeing them again after a few months. So I didn't get into it so much for that, but man, I'm taking a lot out of it from that. So yeah, I really do enjoy the camaraderie at the track. I typically, I've got a list of guys that I'll just send a kind of track schedule at the beginning of the year and say, this is where I'm planning on going this year. And if you can join me, great.
So have you done any competitive driving?
I have not.
Okay. Now, I know there's an HPDE Junkie Miata. Is that correct?
There is.
So is that your personal track car?
It is.
That is your track weapon of choice, huh? So what led you to the Miata?
Money, basically. No, I started doing track days in a 370Z, and it had some horsepower and it handled pretty good, but I quickly realized that I didn't like buying $1,500 sets of tires every third weekend. And it has some track related flaws that made it a little less desirable. And it really boiled down to twice a year is not enough for me. So how do I do this more? So I saw all the Miatas at the track. I had a buddy with one. I was like, let me take that for a spin. And I did. And I was like, this might be fun. And it really was, I got to admit, it was mostly about, how much money am I going to spend a year doing this?
Right.
And you guys, whether you have Miatas or not, you can buy a good set of $500 tires that'll last you pretty much all year, and the same thing with brake pads. So, but now that I have one, I don't even want to drive anything else. I have so much fun driving this car.
So was that a build versus buy? Did you buy a prep Miata or have you built it up yourself over the years?
No, I bought a beater some guy's wife drove and spilled Coca-Cola all over the inside car. And, before the first outing, I did a few things. Coilovers, upgraded the brakes, roll bar, I think seats and harnesses. And then, as I said, I'm single with no kids, so down the rabbit hole I went. And She's pretty sweet now, though. I got to admit, I love it. I mean, I have just a blast driving it. So what do you guys drive?
So we are, if Brad's background is a giveaway, that is an indication of what we drive. So I've been in the Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche family forever. So right now I campaign several different fourth generation VWs, as does Brad. He has a fourth gen GTI. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with them.
No, but I personally, I don't know about Eric, but I chose mine. Well, I started with a GTI when I started, driving, essentially. This is the first car I ever bought for myself. And I've had like 4 or 5 Mark IV Golfs, and I just think they're great cars. And one of the reasons I picked it when I started getting into HPDE is because, like you were saying with the Miata, the consumables are so reasonably priced. And for someone that doesn't make, boku bucks all the time, and I do have a family, or I have a wife and everything, so I have to consider costs and budgeting and stuff like that. There's something about having a car that's fast enough, you can have a lot of fun in, and consumables are reasonable.
Yeah, and I should have noticed earlier the picture behind you, which reminded me I very, very easily could have gone down the golf road. I think I was 18, and that would have been like 86. And I was ready to buy a new GTI, and I needed my mom to co-sign. And she came and she rode with me in it, and I think I drove it too fast, and she said, "No way." So you can blame my mom for not going down the VW route.
And the reason I haven't gone down the Miata route is because I'm 6'4".
Oh, okay. Well, you have a good excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What would you say is your biggest oops moment on track? Now, after all these years.
Wow. I try not to oops real bad. Wow, man, you kind of got the most recent one I can remember is uphill S's at VIR. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but it would be the second turn outside rumble strip. There is a hell of a pothole there.
Yep.
And I caught that and bent a tie rod pretty good. I wouldn't want to say the degrees, but it was crooked, noticeably crooked. Fortunately, though, that was the only thing. I didn't bend a wheel or anything else, so I was pretty lucky there. Yeah, I'm pretty uneventful, I think. Sorry.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We always like to ask that question in case there's a nugget, or, a golden nugget of information there you can pass on to a newbie, right? Yeah, I messed up that one time, and I shouldn't have gone out that last session, or I should have, there's always those stories.
Well, I didn't crash or go off major, but I'm a firm believer of, man, if you're not in it, don't go out. End of the day, you don't want to. And I find I quickly see myself. Okay, I missed that turn in. Oh, I missed the apex. Let's just roll it in.
Exactly.
I really, and I guess that's part of the drive fast safely. I really do like it when people are really safe at the track. I mean, HPDE is not racing. I think we're all kind of out there for that reason, to get our adrenaline rush, but in the safest way possible. So I really hate when I see silliness on the track. I'm sure you guys do too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just no place for it,
Exactly. So what's your favorite spectator motorsport? Like examples, Formula One, WRC.
F1. Yeah, I'm pretty avid. And, like I said earlier, my dad had me at Watkins Glen at 70 and went a couple more times to the Glen, went to the Canadian a couple times as a teenager. And I still DVR practice 1, practice 2, and I watch all of them. And, a lot of people like buddies that watch, and like, how do you watch all that? And I'm like, that's where you learn all the behind the scenes and the juice and what's going on and why this and why that. I said, man, I mean, you got to watch it kind of like a sitcom drama in a way. You don't pay attention to the cars going around. You're listening to what the guys are talking about.
Who's your driver?
I gotta say Lewis, just out of respect that the guy can drive the shit out of the car. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just always amazes me of how he just pulls it out. He's a phenomenal driver.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love his bravado at the last race where he got that penalty, and then he's
Oh
like,
no, I hadn't watched it yet. I hadn't
Oh,
watched
spoiler!
it yet.
Spoiler!
"Hey, we're a
Well,
week
well, well,
past the race."
no. There was, well, I guess we are, but I stopped it last night at the red flag. So
Okay. Well, but so okay, so you saw that there was talks of getting a penalty and stuff
yeah,
because of
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And he got the penalty.
Spoiler alert, he got a penalty.
Yeah.
You have to watch the rest of the race. He
Okay.
doesn't win,
Well,
obviously, but
I
you got to watch.
I plan to actually. It's when we're done. That's what's going on.
Nice. So you got a favorite driver? Is there a favorite manufacturer from F1?
Um,
You in the Ferrari camp, the Mercedes camp, Williams maybe?
you know what? I mean, obviously, Mercedes. I don't know what it is about Ferrari. I don't hate them, but I don't ever find myself pulling for them. I really am enjoying seeing, the what do they call them? The back half or teams coming up. McLaren was running great. I just like seeing those younger guys in the cars that haven't been doing good. Um, I gotta say I do like what's Williams driver Russell, his first name I can't remember. It's
George.
George. I really like him, and he's kind of in a car that he maybe nobody could drive fast, but I like his personality. And Danny Rick. I mean, how can you not like Daniel Ricciardo? I mean, he's just the nicest guy in the world. At least he comes across that way. And I don't know if you guys have watched the Netflix series, the F1 series.
Yeah, yeah.
He's in a lot of that, and I don't know. I just love the guy. He's just a really nice guy, I think, and a good at heart guy.
Having been an F1 fan since the 70s, that means you came up through the era of Jackie Stewart and Emerson Fittipaldi and Mario Andretti and Senna and Schumacher and all the big names, right? The Hills and the Brabhams and all of them. So do you have a favorite out of all that time?
Yeah, Mario, and it's based on I got to shake his hand and meet him when I was, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. What 77? I would have. Is that the year he won? I think 77. So I'd have been 10, and we went to the race at the Glen. He didn't win it, but it was the year he won the championship, and just happened to pass him in the paddock and shook his hand. So yeah, Mario.
Nice.
I don't remember a lot of the old guys just because I was too little. But, like in Canada, I kind of remember, Lauda and I'm not really remembering the rest of them right now. But, it was a cool experience. And if I got to say, if anybody can ever get the chance to see F1 live, it's TV does nothing for it. The acceleration and the braking deceleration it's insane. Absolutely. And then after you've driven on track and kind of, we think we decelerate quickly. I mean, it's just insane. It's almost like the fighter jets landing, shoot. They just, it's amazing. You got to see it sometime if you get the chance.
Absolutely. So do you think there's an all-time best F1 driver? Are you in that camp?
I don't know if I could call that one. I mean, I think Lewis is he's breaking all the records. So he's a very likely candidate, but I don't know, I don't know that I could judge that on some of the guys from the 70s and 80s that I just didn't know enough about anything I just wanted to see the cars go fast,
So speaking of that, a couple extra questions here, I suppose. So what kind of car posters were on your wall as a kid?
Definitely the Countach S. I think I had a 935. I don't remember which sponsor it was. But I don't really remember how, probably some maybe centerfold or big page pictures out of Motor Trend or Car Driver. But yeah, the Countach in 935, the Countach like everybody else that's my age.
Nice. So top 3 cars of all time, in your opinion?
Made or owned?
Either one. You tell me.
What the heck? Let's do both. That I've owned, I had an S2000. That was pretty sweet. That was actually my original, I'm ready to track my car. And that was in 06. But it was really expensive back then. And I couldn't get anybody to go with me. So the economy crapped out and that one went away. But man, that was a really cool, fun driving car. In hindsight, I'm glad that I didn't get to track it, because now I kind of see him as like, man, what do you do with that car on the track? That thing's worth a lot of money. And I would say after that, I'm not counting the Miata. The Z was pretty cool, but not nearly. It just didn't drive as nice as the S2000. And not that it was the best driving, but it's become kind of such a cool car these days. I bought a Nissan 240SX in 1988, the first week it was out, and it was an 89 model. So I was one of the first owners of a 240SX, and that's the one I wish I still had, because, you know, they definitely got little value too. Well, I wish I still had the S2000 too, because it was spotless. I never drove it in the rain. And I, you know, if it never made it to the track, it would probably still be that way. But, and then other cars, I've always been fond of the 935 Porsche, and it's a lot of it's the look of it. And, you know, being a kid, I just like the way it looked, the big fender flares and the slope nose.
The short or the long tail 935?
I guess I like the long a little better. And then, you know, it's kind of silly, but I guess my semi-attainable dream car is to have a Beck Spider, you know, the Porsche Spider copy. I just think that's a really cool car, and, you know, they're not crazy expensive, and they're pretty freaking fast. Absolutely. And I just love the look of them. Beyond that, man.
All right, I'll throw it to you this way. Sexiest car of all time?
Jaguar XKE, I think. You know, just that long front end.
Nice. The E-Type is like a constant theme around here, isn't it?
But it's just such a beautiful car, you know, just really cool car. And the hard top. I don't like the convertibles so much. I like the hard tops.
Yeah, the coupe. Yeah, the coupe's a gorgeous car. All right. Well, those are good. Those are good questions. Get to know you better. We can work that in. Go ahead, Brad.
And what's the best racetrack in your opinion, that you've been on?
Pit race. I freaking love it. I said to a couple buddies this past weekend, I was there this past weekend for 3 days, and I said, man, I think I would rather drive pit race than VIR.
Ooh, that's a bold statement.
I know it's crazy, but it's really a lot Miata based. I mean, coming down the back straight, the VIR and the Miata, I get a little bored. I could send a text if I wanted to, you know, 115 miles an hour at the end. You know, it's just, but the rest of the track I love. But pit race, man, I think I love every part of it. I just love it. I have so much fun.
Are there any international tracks that you haven't driven that you wish you could? I know Eric's probably got one or two. I've got, you know, one or two.
I'd like to drive the Glen. I'm a little scared of it because of all the walls.
Oh, the blue bushes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Glen's a cupcake. The Glen is a baby. It's easy.
It really is.
Is Barber considered an international?
It's just anything in the world that you haven't driven that you really would love to.
I really want to get to Barber. You know, I mean, my ultimate dream is to be able to take a year and just travel back and forth and up and down and hit them all. I mean, but with 80 some in the country, man, you kind of caught me off guard. Barber's one I'm really wanting to hit yet. Have you guys been there?
Yeah, I went last year. So we do something every year called the Cannonball Run. Yeah. And basically we draw a line from the Washington Monument about 12 hours out, and then you kind of take a protractor and make a big circle. And anything that fits in there, we try to figure out where we want to go to. So within that, you have really good reach if you think about it. You can get out as far as Road America, you can get down to Barber, you can get down to a lot of places. Realistically, if you're hauling butt, you could almost get down to NOLA in 12 hours. But we've done Road Atlanta, we've done Barber, we've done a bunch of places, NCM, I mean, all over the place. So, you know, between most of us in GTM, we've done a lot of tracks. And Barber is awesome. It's on a whole nother level. I mean, IndyCar runs there, all the big tracks, Watkins Glen, it's intimidating because it's enormous, and you realize in a Miata you're going to be flat out the whole time. I mean, if you're bored at VIR, you're going to be bored at the Glen too. But
well, at least at the Glen, I'm thinking I'm going to be flat out through corners.
Well,
But-
The whole track.
and at the Glen, when you're bored, you look around and you see the beautiful mountainscapes
gorgeous.
around you. It's a
absolutely
beautiful
gorgeous.
place to be.
I mean, I'm sure that I'll get there at some point, especially, after being there a couple times as a kid, it definitely makes me want to go.
Yeah.
But Barber's definitely on the list. I was supposed to go to NCM in April, but it got canceled, and I was kind of looking forward to that one.
Yeah, NCM's different because we've talked about it before on the show. NCM's interesting because it's not a racetrack. It's a factory test track, and therefore its flow is completely different. A lot of the turns and a lot of the segments are designed to model real tracks, and so you'll get down to centimeter accuracy of turns at Le Mans, and you're like,
Oh,
wow,
wow.
I just drove the Porsche S's, or or the corkscrew at Laguna, and the problem is because it simulates other tracks, the flow is horrendous. And you end up having to learn it in these weird little pieces to make it make sense to you. And then it becomes fun because you're like, oh, I'm in section 1 and I have to treat it like this. And then in section 2, treat it like that. So it's extremely challenging, but it doesn't have the same rhythm that a normal track would have because it's designed to stress a car. It's not designed for driver enjoyment, right? It's a totally different animal.
I had no idea of that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Have you guys driven at NC Car?
Yes.
Yeah. And I, as you're saying it, I'm thinking about NC Car and the monotony of, it's just
Well, the difference with
sweeping.
Yeah, so the difference with NC Car is that's more like, let's call it, Consumer Reports would test there
Yeah.
versus this is where they're testing the AL, they're testing, the GTLM C8, right, for testing overseas, that kind of thing. So NCM is full of elevation changes. It's full of just crazy corners, and it's just very different. And Brad, you've been there too, so go ahead.
Yeah, I very much agree that NC Car is more of like Eric was saying, the Consumer Reports. Manufacturers are going to bring their stock vehicles out, and test them around the track and see how they perform. And almost it's a safe environment, but almost like normal street type conditions. But at the National Corvette Museum, it's very much I'm bringing my IMSA cars to test these corners that simulate corners overseas or at certain tracks, because I can't get you can only practice so many times before you actually race there. So you take the hardest parts of those tracks or the most popular ones, and they're at NCM, and you can test and see how the car does, and almost it's like a simulation.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a very different experience.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully next year will work out.
And the only other track you could relate to NCM, not to belabor that discussion any more than we have to, is Shenandoah. And if you've ever driven on Shenandoah, it's also broken up very oddly, and it's designed to simulate corners from other places as well. And it's a better setup track than it is a race track, if you kind of understand how Summit Point's Shenandoah circuit works. So same idea. I mean, NCM's a lot more extreme. You can go a lot faster.
Sure.
It's huge too. So.
Yeah, I have not been to Summit Point yet.
Oh, wow.
And that's, another track that I grew up in central Pennsylvania, so Summit Point was real close, and that was a track we went to quite often, SCCA stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably 3-4 times a year we would go to. But then it was just the one track. But, I definitely like to drive there because I saw so many races there, and we'd camp, and it was just a whole experience. So I definitely want to drive that track.
So is home track for you VIR, or is it Carolina Motorsports Park?
I'm about dead center. It's 3.5 to either one. And now that CMP's freshly been repaved, I'm real excited to get over there.
How is that? Because we've been debating going down there. It's a roval, which we've done some others like Pocono and other tracks that have been converted like that. So what's CMP like?
No, not Charlotte.
Oh,
Motor
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, Carolina Motorsports Park is west of Columbia, South Carolina. It's a great tight track. I would call it a Miata track, like I would call pit race a Miata track. Shorter straightaways, lot of turns, not a lot of elevation change, but it's been, it's just been beat up for years. The surface has been like a cheese grater for years, and it's had the bad reputation. Well, It just got repaved over the summer, and it should be pretty sweet.
It's not Nelson
Would
Ledges,
you guys
right?
agree? I hadn't really even ever asked anybody about Nelson Ledges until this past weekend, and had really no idea what it was about. But I hear it's pretty sketchy.
It used to be. It was luckily and thankfully they shut it down for a while. They recently repaved it. It holds the title of fastest lap in terms of average speed east of the Mississippi. So it's supposed to be a really exciting lap in terms of it's a quick lap. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Like they kept the jump in the kinked straightaway and things like that. But the potholes are seemingly gone. Because I heard from some guys that were SCCA road racing there that or club racing there that, it was pretty much like an autocross because you were avoiding all the potholes, which were the size of craters on the moon. So, it was in disrepair. It needed some love. We're happy to see it back on the schedule. Hopefully it's on HPD Junkies schedule.
It is. It
yeah,
absolutely
and we were actually planning on going out there this year, but with everything being what it is, it's tough to make those sorts of plans.
But since you mentioned it, Charlotte Motor Speedway, I have done the Roval there for a track night, and I don't know, man. I just don't want to crash my car into concrete, and it's everywhere. And but it's an experience to drive that high bank, and I guess you've probably done it at Pocono, so you guys are aware of it. But it was kind of eye opening, the first time I hit the bank, and I'm looking out the windshield, and I'm like, I can't see anything. And I look in the mirror, and I'm like, I can't see anything. So I ended up, basically driving out of my little wing window, looking kind of to the side. And that was, in those high banks only, not on the straightaways. But yeah, it was just something that it didn't occur to me was going to be how it was. You just see asphalt and asphalt.
All right, so this is just a like a daydreaming question. You get one car on one racetrack anywhere in the world, any car you want. What's your combination? You're driving. Money is no object. You don't have to worry about bending it in a concrete wall or anything. You'll be perfectly fine. What's your car and track combination?
Do I have to be able to drive it in real life?
No, you are Senna. You've got the skills of Senna for this dream.
Yeah, that's what I want to drive, a modern F1 car at possibly Coda. Yeah, I mean, it really wouldn't matter. I wouldn't want to drive at Monaco. I just don't like that tight street track. But if I could drive an F1 car, that would be the thing. Just because I mean, you guys see it too. You know what it's like to drive pretty fast on the track, but that's so far beyond. And what puts it in perspective is when you see the safety car out there, and guys like us can tell that safety car is pushing the limits, and it's leaning and it's slipping a little bit. And those guys are behind him, weaving back and forth, heating their tires up, and they look like they're going 10 miles an hour. So I can't even imagine what it's like to drive those cars.
Yeah. If you like what you've heard and want to learn more about GTM, be sure to check us out on www.gtmotorsports.org. You can also find us on Instagram at Grand Touring Motorsports. Also, if you want to get involved or have suggestions for future shows, you can call or text us at 202-630-1770 or send us an email at crewchief@gtmotorsports.org. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey listeners, Crew Chief Eric here. Do you like what you've seen, heard, and read from GTM? Great, so do we, and we have a lot of fun doing it. But please remember, we're fueled by volunteers and remain a no annual fee organization. But we still need help to keep the momentum going so that we can continue to record, write, edit, and broadcast all of your favorite content. So be sure to visit www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports or visit our website and click in the top right corner on the support and donate to learn how you can help.